Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is the RAD Parenting Podcast. This is Holly Kyle, and we have, as always, Tracey Turner, who is a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor based out of North Carolina. And we are coming to you today with a topic that's super timely. We are talking about some tips to get ready to send your kid back to school, because it's a little bit different when you have a rad kid in the house, I imagine.
Yeah, I definitely. And we're on top of that. We're coming off of the pandemic too. So you got,
Oh, yeah, everything has changed.
yeah,
So we thought it might be timely to give you some tips to maybe make that transition a little bit smoother and less hectic and stressful.
right. And you can do the back to school woohoo dance, right?
There you go. There you go. We like doing the back to school woohoo dance. So what do you think? What's the first tip that you would give parents, Tracey, for getting ready to go back to school and getting back into that?
Yeah, typically when it's, back to school, I know when I was a kid, back to school was like, oh, I get school shoes and a school outfit and a new pair of underwear, right? Which are useful, and the new backpack type of thing. But I think for a child who has some developmental complex trauma issues and reactive attachment disorder issues, really it's coming up with a daily routine. What
Mhm.
is the routine going to be for them? And to kind of know that that's for any kid, that's not always going to go as smoothly as possible, right? But I think it's important, and it's good to practice this routine before school starts. Practice. Okay, what's the bedtime? What's the bedtime? What's the wake up time? What's the morning routine? And always, as parents, you always want to be in charge of that routine, and you always want to have the attitude of like, hey, no problem for me. You can go to school with your shoes on, go to school with your shoes off. It's not a problem. You're still going to school, still your parents, still my kids, still love you. And we're still going out the door at 8 o'clock or whatever
Okay.
time it might be.
Okay.
I know, and we didn't talk about this, but I do know that parents come up with, the struggle with riding the school bus or not.
Okay.
And if it's possible to carpool your kid to school, that's going to probably be the easiest thing because there's so much chaos that happens on the school bus.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think most parents with a rad kid are kind of go, yeah, we try to avoid the bus as much as possible.
Hmm.
So, um,
I imagine that's a good time when, if you have a network of other moms in the area,
yeah,
other parents that, maybe a couple of you can carpool and limit the exposure, the bus time, and
last times.
but not be on the hook every single day for it.
Yeah,
So
you're just kind of building your routine. So,
so talking about that, it's the morning routine, getting up, getting out. What about after they come home from school? What does that look like? Because now they've been stimulated all day at school, and what kind of challenges might a parent face in with that scenario?
yeah, so you really want to, it's the reconnection, right? It's like, so for many kids, they're struggling with out of sight, out of mind. They're going to school. School is kind of like orphan mentality on some level for them. It's kind of like Chuck E. Cheese on steroids. There's a lot of stimulation. There's one teacher to maybe 10 to anywhere from 20 kids, depending how big your classroom is. That can be hard for teachers to manage and for your child to feel safe and contained. Um, so that being able, a transitional object can be really nice. It's kind of like, hey, here's, if your kid is small or in middle school and younger, it's always nice to have a picture of the family or mom, and they can put it in a little cubby hole or in their locker and kind of go, see, mom still loves you, mom's still watching you, right? So that there's a connection there that they can get, or that there's a little stone that they have. It's like the kissing hand, the book The Kissing Hand. There's something that the kids reminding them that they have in their pocket, or they're in their literal in their palm, where they have that connection of like, oh, mom still loves me, mom's still here, I'm still safe. So it is kind of practicing that routine while that's kind of the morning routine while they're in school, and then coming home you have to reconnect again. So it
Okay.
is that eye contact, that is that connection of like, really, if you're picking them up, then it's while you're in the car, like, hey, let's listen to some music, or it's all at the parent's discretion, right? So it's like, well, tell me about your day, or how did things go? And they may or may not want to talk, which is fine. Once you get them home, always good to feed them, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's good to feed them in the car if you're picking them up to kind of give them a snack. It's like, here's something full of mom's love, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
something healthy, but something that has a little bit of sweetness to it as well, so that they get that reconnection. Always good to do that at home where you can give them eye contact instead of throwing it back in the back seat, kind of like, here you go, kid, right? As much as possible, depending on how many kids you've got to pick up and what the routine is. Um, when they get home, it's really good to kind of put them in their strong sitting spot where they can strong sit and just transition home. They're just like, hey, you're home, things are good, you're still safe. There might be a routine of take your shoes off, put them in the, in the hallway, come in and wash your hands. Whatever it is, it's good to have that daily routine of the same
Mm-hmm.
thing happening when they get home. Sit at the table, they're connecting with you as mom or dad or whoever's home with them. And then I would say, physical activity is always a useful thing. They may have been sitting all day long, or they're wound up. A little exercise, they'll go jump on the trampoline, or let's go for a walk while we talk about what your homework situation is. And then you're going to transition them into dinner and homework, dinner time, bath time, bedtime, right? Start all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of challenges might a parent encounter with the bedtime routine? Are there any things that RAD kids in particular that seem to show up commonly?
Yeah, I think it's another transition. They've gone to school, they're coming home from school. It's another transition from school to home, to like dinner time, connecting, and then getting ready for bed, and then going to bed. That's a lot of that's a lot of activity, a lot of stimulation, a lot of transition. Um, so it's important. Once again, it's fluid, right? The routines are fluid in the sense that, hey, because if you do A, then B will happen. A lot of times A doesn't happen quite the way we want it to, so then B doesn't look quite the same, and then the kids can get really upset that, hey, you said B was going to happen.
Right.
So you really want to have it be more fluid in the sense that as soon as A gets done, I'll be more than happy to transition over to B for you. As soon as you brush your teeth, I'll be more than happy to read your bedtime story. Like, okay, so now they brush their teeth and it's 8 o'clock, bedtime's 8 o'clock. It might be, well, tonight's story is going to be shorter due to the fact that you took so long brushing your teeth. Not a problem. Still your parent, still my kids, still love you. No worries. We can try again tomorrow, but it's, so you don't drag it out now where now bedtime's now 10 o'clock, right? Where you're
Got
just,
it.
right. So it's just, sometimes it's kind of going, well, that's going to be cut short. My energy tank has been drained by you spending so much time in the bathroom. And trust that it's going to get worse before it gets better, because they are not going to want that. They're going to want to try to hold your attention as long as possible, keep you captive as long as possible. So it's really important to kind of go, yeah, no, I'm in charge of this, not a problem. They may or may not throw a fit, and you're like, that's not, no worries.
Yeah.
We can do this again. That delayed consequence is always a wonderful thing. We've got weekends to be able to, kind of push things forward if the week has been really horrific. And worst case scenario is when you get to call me up and kind of go, so this sounded really good on the podcast. This sounded really good on the session over the phone. And here's where we're at. And I
Yeah.
really prefer parents to do that initially, because this transition back into school, coming and then having them be away from you, coming back home, trying to reconnect, and then move into a routine where everybody can get a little bit of mom time. Mom gets a little mom time herself,
Mhm.
can be a struggle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think the last thing that we talked about that was really a good point about an important piece of the transition back to school um, is really communicating with the teachers and the school staff. And I'm wondering if maybe we could just talk about that on its own episode, because it seems like that's a bigger topic
yeah,
than the rest. But I guess really it comes down to having a routine, but being flexible for going back into school and um, just reconnecting at every moment that you can. Is that fair?
yeah, that's fair. And I think just to synapse it up even more, it's kind of like, we as parents get really caught up in what that the routine has to happen, or that it has to
Mm,
happen a certain way, or that we have to do this for school, or the kids get caught up in this has to happen this way. And the reality is it doesn't have to.
yeah.
The most important thing is, are you feeling as a parent that you're in charge of the given situation? And are you feeling a connection with your kid? And is your kid, are you able to help your child regulate so that your child can then be able to, when all said and done, go to bed calmly, wake up a happy kid the following morning? That's the goal we're looking for, right? And then everything else can fall by the wayside. And that's where we'll talk about in our next podcast about, what do we tell teachers about that? Because sometimes
Yeah.
they're not real happy with the fact that, hey, homework didn't get done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a great transition for us. And thank you, everybody who tunes in to listen to the Rad Parenting Podcast. We really appreciate it. You can find out more about us, listen to other episodes at fullcirclefamilycounseling.com. If you have any questions you want us to cover in the podcast in the future, you can always email us rad@fullcirclefamilycounseling.com. Again, I'm Holly, and this is Tracey. Tracey, thank you as always for your
Thank you.
expertise. I know that these parents really, really value what you're able to help them to manage on a day-to-day basis. So we look forward to seeing everybody next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.